We are talking the Dyatlov Pass incident from 2013, also known as the Devil's Pass, and this is a found footage directed by Renny Harlin. Yes, Renny Harlin of Die Hard 2 fame, among others. So a relatively kind of well-produced found footage movie. Now, the Dyatlov incident, Dyatlov Pass incident, is actually a real historical event that happened, I think it was the late 50s, where a group of 9 Russian hikers all perished under somewhat kind of mysterious circumstances, seemingly running away from their kind of camp. So there's a variety of theories about what has happened. So this movie is based on, you know, the setup that was caused by this real event. But the story we have on film here is not that actual event, not the original event. It's modern Americans effectively trying to do a kind of documentary about that original incident. So this is why we're saying it's inspired by a true event. Okay, so the setup is we have a group of American students wanting to kind of try and find out the truth behind this kind of incident, be it Yetis, be it aliens, be it government conspiracies, be it the military, you know, whatever it is. So it kind of starts off a little bit like the kind of the Blair Witch Project. We have our introduction to our different kind of characters. We have them travelling to this kind of like the outskirts of this location, chatting to a couple of locals. And then we kind of head off into the wilderness where obviously things start to kind of go wrong. Now, once we kind of get into the kind of the story in its main, yes, weird things start to happen. Our group finds a mysterious door which leads into an underground bunker where they will discover some things that shouldn't be there, shall we say, that relates back to another kind of well-known incident, shall we say. And we have a variety of different things happening. Now, that's all I'll kind of say in the plot. It's a 2013 movie, so chances are, at this point, you've probably seen it, but I won't go into any more than that. So let's discuss what works in this movie's favour. Now, Renny Harlin, as I mentioned, a successful director. So it's kind of weird almost seeing him make these, like a found footage movie, which tends to be, you know, more of a lower budget kind of starting point for many kind of filmmakers. But because we have an experienced director, it looks like it has a higher production value than a lot of kind of movies. Now, this obviously takes place in Russia, and parts of it were actually filmed in Russia. So it does have an air of authenticity to it. I think maybe it betrays it in a couple of ways, but nonetheless, obviously it being filmed in kind of Russia, these kind of snowy wilderness and things like that, you know, it does have a, you know, a good sense of believability, at least in its kind of locale and the kind of the setup. And obviously it being based on true events, you know, it kind of makes you interested in the kind of the real kind of case and things like that, which I suspect was probably a little more mundane than maybe this movie would suggest. So, you know, there it is. Now, one of the kind of the interesting things in this movie is if you're not a fan of the found footage genre because of the kind of the erratic camera movements and the shaky cam and all that sort of stuff, I would say, with a few exceptions, for the most part, this movie doesn't really feel like a found footage movie, even though we are meant to believe that it is. So we have actually quite a good camera. There's minimal kind of like fake distortions. A lot of the camera shots are actually relatively kind of quite still, and you know, we get good wide angles and things like this. So it kind of, you almost forget you're watching a found footage movie. Every so often there'll be a bit of like shaky cam, or you'll see the camera, you know, someone kind of move the camera around. Now, it's a good and bad thing, because the movie does look like it has that higher production value, and if you're not a fan of that kind of the downsides of maybe the found footage genre, this is minimal. There's minimal kind of shaky cam and things like that. I would say the flip side of it, it kind of doesn't really feel like a found footage movie, and it kind of feels like it's not genuinely like footage that you would have got in that type of scenario. There's a couple of inconsistencies in regards to some story points in that as well, but just the actual kind of the technical elements of it, it looks a little bit too good for found footage, if that makes sense. So there you go. I think the setup of this movie is quite strong, even though, yes, it sort of starts off kind of quite similar to the Blair Witch, but I have to say I thought there's so many things that this could be. If you are not familiar with how this film is going to pan out, it's like, well, this could be any number of kind of things, and it almost has multiple kind of things that these kind of group of people have to overcome. You know, it might be more than one thing at once. We might have, you know, some type of supernatural element, but we might also have some type of kind of government kind of thing. It kind of feels a little bit like X-Files. If you can imagine a found footage movie which is kind of has an X-Files tinge to it, then I think you may want to check this one out. I think the performances are okay. I think some of the characters are a little bit written in a way which may not be particularly favourable, but I think the acting is fine. And, you know, it does have some quite interesting ideas about what the actual kind of plot is all about. Somewhat ambitious, you might say. So, what doesn't work in this movie? So I've already mentioned, I think maybe it feels a little bit not like real found footage in the way that it's filmed, but there are also some sequences where it doesn't make logical sense. For example, there's a scene where there is an avalanche, and there's a character who we see gets buried by this avalanche, and you see it from their camera point of view. But obviously that camera is now lost, so how have they got that footage? There's a couple of other instances as well. So the conceit of a found footage is a little bit kind of loose, you might say. It's a minor point, but you know that's kind of worth bringing up. But also on another technical level, we have some creature effects in this movie. It's very CGI. In actual fact, I would actually say the kind of the creature sequences look like a video game. I have put a clip at the beginning to kind of demonstrate this, but it kind of looks like a video game, like a horror video game. Not the best, and it's I wouldn't. The weird thing is as well is they're not too monstrous exactly. I think it's something that could have been achieved practically. Maybe it could have been enhanced, but it kind of looks like a video game. So yeah, the VFX are a little weak. But I mean, it looks, as I said, the actual kind of location, all that sort of stuff is quite impressive. It's just the VFX let it down on the kind of like the production side of things. Now, onto the characters. This movie does something which I find a little irritating in regards to characters. The acting was okay, but it's that typical kind of like abrasive American abroad. You know, Americans kind of going in to other countries and kind of not respecting the kind of the culture there and things like that. They're kind of, we're meant to believe these people are scientifically minded and you know that they're not professionals because they're students, but they're at least academic, and you know you kind of like, well, you know, they kind of seem a little bit obnoxious at times, I have to say. And then when we kind of you know, are actually kind of a little bit more into the movie, again, it's like weird stuff starts to happen, and everyone thinks, oh, you're pulling a prank and things like this, and it ends up being some quite kind of typical kind of sort of character things that happen in the movie, you know. So I wasn't a kind of a big fan of some of the kind of the character choices here, the way these characters are written. No disrespect to the actors, it was the writing in regards to that. And then the actual kind of plot, where which is the kind of the last act of the movie, where it goes into the more sci-fi horror elements, were convoluted. Let me just say that. It's ambitious, it's convoluted, and I don't know if it really makes complete sense. It's all I'll say. There are a few kind of issues where you're thinking, I don't know if that really makes logical sense. You know, there it is. And it kind of, I have to say, it's not as strong as the setup, I think, would kind of have you believe. It would be, I think it would have been more interesting to have a story about the original expedition. Maybe they kind of don't want to disrespect the people who lost their lives on that, I don't know. But, you know, this is kind of like, it ends up being somewhat typical. It's a well-made film outside of some ropey VFX. And, you know, it kind of hits some of those kind of points that some of you may find annoying. It ends up being somewhat of a middle-of-the-road found footage film for me. It's not bad. I didn't think it was particularly kind of impressive. A lot of people hold this one in relatively high regard. It's fine. It's a 5 out of 10 for me, this one. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to you next time. Bye for now.